Welcome to another edition of Cycle Breaker Talks. I am Judge Dawson, and as you know, these talks are aimed to give you power. I'm not here to hold you long, but I want to give you information that you can use. I mean, think about it. I've been a judge now for 9 years, and during those 9 years, I've seen a lot, right? I've seen people destroy their lives, and I've seen people make beautiful symphonies out of their life. The bottom line is that there are tools and techniques that can take you to the next level. It doesn't matter if you are 5 years old or 105 years old. As long as you're here on this earth, we all have the ability to elevate our thinking, elevate our interactions, and thereby elevating our entire lives. And not just your life, but the lives of people that are around you, your family, your friends. So I invite you to this session with all humbleness, because my goal is to give you information that you can use to take your life to the next level. All of my theories and all of the concepts that I've come up with for success revolve around pretty much the same sphere, right? Right now, we're talking about what it means to be a cycle breaker, because cycle breakers are universal. Cycle breakers are people who want to break the cycle, the monotony, the repetitious things that are happening in their life, the things that happen over and over again, almost like they don't have any control. But you and I know that there's control if you just tap into the tools that are needed. So let's talk about being a cycle breaker. What are the steps? Number one, you have to recognize the need to break a cycle. That could be anything, right? That could be something negative. You know that you've been smoking and it hasn't been great for your health. Or you argue with a certain person all the time and that's been terrible for that relationship. Or your attitude has been such that it's caused you to not increase in your wealth or your success. Whatever it is, you have to recognize there is a need to break a cycle. Now, it doesn't always have to be negative. What if that's a cycle where you just want to move to the next level? So maybe instead of, going through life not physically fit, not healthy, you decide to work out. Or maybe you decide to take a yoga teacher training or something like that so that you can have better tools to manage your life and to spread love through the world. See, breaking cycles don't always have to be negative. It could be something positive. But the first step is you have to recognize the need to break a cycle. Number two, after you've recognized that there's a need to break a cycle, you have to make a commitment to breaking the cycle. And that's where a lot of people fall off, right? We have time for everything in the world, but we don't have time for success. We have money to spend on McDonald's every week and Starbucks, but we don't have money to invest in our success. You have to make a commitment to changing for the better. And believe me, commitment costs one way or the other. Either you're going to be spending money to better your life, or you'll be spending money to get yourself out of situations that you could have avoided. So committing to breaking the cycle is number two. Number three, after you've recognized the need to break a cycle, you've made the commitment, now you have to get the tools and resources to go to the next level. And that's kind of what we're talking about when we talk about commitment, because there is no commitment without an understanding of the tools that will take you to the next level. So through your training, through the books you read, through the people you talk to, how are you gaining a new ability or a new understanding so that you can go to the next level? The fourth one, and really important, is that you have to have the grit to hang in there when the going gets tough. When people are going against you, when everything is telling you that you should quit, you then have to have the ability to say, you know what? I am going to stick with it. You put those four elements together and you are on the road to being a cycle breaker. Recognize the need for change, commit to making the change, get the tools and resources so that you can change, and then stay in the game when the going gets hard. That's all it takes. Today's session, I'm going to talk to you about the ability to surrender. In fact, the title of this session is Surrendering to Win. And how many times have you heard that? It's almost like they're contradictory ideas. Most times you don't think that I have to surrender in order to win, because how can I win if I have surrendered? But when you take it to a new level of thinking, you'll see how those two are not only interrelated, but they're connected so much that that is actually required for you to win. Surrender. That's something that we talk about in yoga all the time. And if you know, I teach yoga classes. I have a yoga school, a teacher training school, and a yoga studio in addition to being a judge. But all that being said, the point of the matter is in yoga, we often talk about surrendering, releasing, letting go, or acknowledging that you don't control everything and you may not even control this moment. But what people don't realize is that there is power in surrender. There is power in the ability to say, you know what, I'm going to take my hands off the wheel for this brief moment because I'm going to let my faith guide me. I'm going to let my hard work speak for me. I'm not going to stress over the things that I cannot control. I'm going to surrender to the moment. Once you tap into the power of surrender, you will win. Why is surrendering so hard? Well, as people, as human beings, we have a natural aversion to surrendering. It's something that's set up in our brains early on. It's the amygdala, where it tells us the fight or flight response. And with that, we don't want to surrender when we think we can win. Now, don't get me wrong. We'll run and we'll fight and, we'll flee when we need to. But I mean, just the ideal of giving up is something that's really not in our DNA. Had it been in our DNA, we wouldn't be in this space where we are right now. We wouldn't be connecting on, social media and over the internet because that wouldn't exist because maybe somebody gave up on that idea. But see, that's another side point. You see how important it is for you not to give up, but sometimes to recognize the surrender, right? To recognize, okay, maybe I can't do it this way. I'm going to let that go. But there's another way. But generally speaking, as human beings, we are adverse to surrender because we want to win or we want to protect what we feel we've earned. And we gotta really deal with that and we need to unpack that. We need to unpack the idea of protecting what we have as opposed to risking it. But see, that's the point where you have to realize that, okay, I'm going to surrender to the moment. I'm going to be able to relax and go to the next level. But we have this idea that, if I have it in me, I can't let it go. So there was a study, multiple studies, in fact, about people who are offered money and rewards to do certain things, right? But what happens is they either have to give up what they have to gain a little bit more, or they stay where they are and hold what they have. The large majority of people would rather stay where they are and hold what they have. They don't want to give up what they have. They don't want to risk it. Same thing with anything like the practice of yoga. I go back to that because that's what I do. A lot of people rather not even try yoga because it's too hard to balance. I don't want to try to stand on one leg. I don't want to try to do something that I haven't done before. They have to be flexible or they have to be bendy and all these other things. So you make up excuses to stay in the same position because you feel that you are protecting what you have. But in reality, what you're doing is failing to surrender to the moment, surrender to the idea that you don't have it all under control. There's nothing wrong with surrendering. In fact, your greatest gains will be made when you realize in the areas in which you cannot fight or you cannot win. Because what you're doing is wasting your resources. You're wasting your resources resisting when surrendering can lead you to the win. For instance, let me give you an example in basketball. Sometimes you're dribbling down the court. It could be LeBron or whoever, he's a GOAT, right? But at some point, if all 5 defenders gather around LeBron, what does LeBron do? He passes the ball and he's giving up the ball at that point. He's not giving up on the game. He's not giving up on winning, but he knows that at that precise moment, he has to surrender. He has to give it to somebody else on his team who can help him in this particular situation. See, we don't realize that when you have a team around you or you have the resources, remember Cycle Breaker, get the resources, or you have the knowledge, or you just have the ability to switch gears, surrendering is not always bad, but many times it's necessary to win. Another reason that we have a hard time surrendering is because we're human beings and you know what? The heart, it matters, right? And losses often affect us harder than the wins. You don't believe me? Just scroll down your Instagram or social media page and see how upset you were at the one negative comment, regardless of all the positive ones you received. All the likes that people gave you, they were okay, but when that one person said something bad, it just tore your world apart. But that's what happens to us as human beings, and that's a natural state. We hold on to the negatives a little bit more than we latch on to the positives. We are a little more disappointed by our losses as opposed to celebrating our wins. And that's another reason why we fail to surrender, because mentally we're telling ourselves that that may be a loss and I don't want to lose. But again, I'm telling you, my friends, surrendering is always momentary. You can surrender for the moment. You can give up for the moment because you know the long game is for you to win. I tell people in my yoga classes all the time, you may not be able to do this pose right now. Downward facing dog is painful for you right now. But surrender to the moment. Recognize that it's a little difficult right now, knowing that you're going to win a little bit later because you're not going to give up on the long game, but you're recognizing right now, I need to pause. Let's think of it that way. Surrendering is similar to a pause. All right, let's get to it. What are the tools that you can use to better surrender so that you can win? First of all, number one, recognize that surrendering does not in any way diminish your value. When LeBron passes the ball, he's still LeBron, right? If you decide to pause at an activity that you're engaged in because you need to reset so that you don't go off on somebody, you're still powerful. You're even more powerful because you used your mind and your control and you controlled your emotions so that you put yourself in a better position later. Yeah, you win this argument now. You won right now, but guess what? Your mind is so strong, your game is so strong that you're going to win in the end. So remember, number one, that surrendering does not diminish who you are or how special you are. Number two, finish first. That's one of the programs I do. And what it means is begin with the end in mind. So you look at the long game and you know that, hey, giving up the ball right now doesn't mean I'm going to lose the game. I mean, you all watch football, right? Or you've seen football. What happens? 1, 2, 3, fourth down. Sometimes you turn it over, but that doesn't mean you lost the game. That means you're surrendering right now. Or maybe a better example, you get to fourth down and instead of going for it, you kick it off to the other team. Yeah, you're giving them the ball right now. You're surrendering to the moment, but you still have a plan to win. So remember that. Think of the long game. Begin with the end in mind, knowing that surrendering could lead to that win. And then the last part, number 3, on how do you better surrender? Number 3 is remember your worth. No matter what anybody says, you are powerful. You are strong. You've made it this far. In fact, you're watching this video. You know how many people wouldn't even make it through this video because they don't have the mental capacity and they don't have the drive or the discipline to sit here, but you've done it. That's one win that can translate into many wins. And what did you do to watch this video? You surrendered to the moment. You could have been doing anything, but you're here with me right now. That's a form of surrendering. But guess what? In the end, we will win. Let's go.